Hey, this is Anney.
And Samantha.
And welcome to Stuff I Never Told You, a production of iHeartRadio. And today we're talking about the groundbreaking, historic 1996 film, The Watermelon Woman, written, directed, and edited, and starring Cheryl Dunye, who, by the way, has done a lot of great interviews, even some pretty recently.
Right. I just don't like the fact that you called it historic for 1996, and I'm offended. I want that to be noted. Okay, keep going.
Well, it's historic in some of the things it did, not necessarily.
Sure.
Oh, geez. All right. But yes, you can find a lot of good interviews with Cheryl Dunye. Recently done a lot with Criterion because this movie has been, in a lot of ways, inducted into the Criterion collection. It's a dramedy, rom-com, semi-autobiography that follows Cheryl's attempts to uncover the history of Mammy actress Faye Richards, who played the Watermelon Woman. That's what she was credited as. Mm-hmm. This was the first U.S. film to be written by an out Black lesbian, and it went on to win critical acclaim and so much more. It also got a lot of pushback that we'll talk about later. It's interesting because every year when we're picking out movies for these kind of events like Pride, we get the same sort of movies on the list. Mm-hmm. This one's been on our list like for years.
For a minute.
Yes. And it's kind of sad how often it's like the list hasn't expanded that much. But I was excited to see this one. And it is really technically interesting because it switches between different styles of film. So you've got 16 millimeter and sort of like a grainy filming myself thing of the 90s, like with your camcorder, you know? Yeah. On top of that, it has a bunch of other aspects like photos that give it a documentary feel. It's been rescreened at colleges. It's the subject of discussion and just really left a lasting impression. Also, yes, it came out in the 90s. Glorious 90s transitions and fonts. Just truly.
Yeah.
And it made me nostalgic for video rental places.
Yeah, that did make me laugh. Which I feel like was a center of a lot of 90s cool kids. You either worked at a video rental place, a CD or record shop. One of those two.
Yes. Oh, I loved it. In 2021, this film was chosen by the Library of Congress's National Film Registry for preservation for being, quote, culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. So it's, again, it made a lasting impression. That's a long time from 1996, I guess. All right, so here is the plot. Cheryl is a Black lesbian 20-something who works at a video rental store in Philadelphia with her friend Tamara, who is also a Black lesbian. As a film person, particularly interested in films from the 30s and 40s, and especially how Black women were portrayed and often uncredited in them, Cheryl decides to make a documentary about a Black actress simply credited as the Watermelon Woman in the fictional film Plantation Memories. She wants to find out who this woman was and shed light on her story and maybe learn more about herself along the way. And she keeps putting it off, by the way. She's like, I've got to work on this project, and then never does. But we finally get to see her working on it. She interviews an array of people, including her mom, who was actually her mom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, until she learns the name of the actress is Faith Richardson. And it's implied to her that Faith, or Faye, was in a relationship with the white lesbian director of the film they worked on together. And this really resonated with Cheryl for a lot of reasons. And she also starts dating a white lesbian customer of the video rental place that they both worked at named Diana. Another interview leads her to the Center for Lesbian Information and Technology, or CLIT, where she finds this autographed photo of Faye dedicated to someone named June Walker. Diana then comes in and says she can hook up Cheryl with Martha Page the sister of Martha Page, the director that was presumably in a relationship with Faye. Meanwhile, Tamara accuses Cheryl of wishing to be white, denouncing her relationship with Diana, who she believes has a fetish for Black women or Black people. Cheryl is able to contact June Walker, a Black woman who informs Cheryl that they were in a relationship, her and Faye, for 2 decades, but now Faye is dead. Cheryl sets out to meet her in person, but June is hospitalized before she arrives. Cheryl's given a letter from June outlining the truth of her and Faye's relationship and her hurt at the rumors that she was with Martha. She pleads with Cheryl to tell the world the truth. And Cheryl, who didn't get to meet Martha, who is estranged from Tamara, has broken up with Diana, completes her documentary, and is like, I have so much more to do. And that's where it ends. It's very like, it feels, I've seen too many horror movies, found footage horror movies.
I was thinking the same thing. I knew that was going to come.
Yeah, no, because I kept being like, whoa. But it has that kind of feel of like, here's this clip and here's this photo and here's, I know I should be thinking documentary, but the found footage vibe was just too strong. But yeah, I mean, and it's just so 90s. It's such a product of its time. Like the way it transitions from scenes. I think that's part of what had me thinking it found footage.
It did, because I wasn't quite sure the back and forth of like, this is not obviously a documentary for real, because you're seeing her reactions about talking without, and then her filming herself. So it's like, it's both. It's a split.
Yes. Yes. And you have her like kind of real life going alongside this project that she's trying to do. And you see the parallels in that. But it would be like, just have a text on screen. And again, the font's amazing. And then it would move into another thing. And I'm like, oh, okay, that scene's over.
Yeah. I did have a couple of those moments where they would have one sentence and then you'd move on, but wait. Yes. Oh, okay.
Yes. It's very much very 90s. And when it came out, it did make a huge wave. It premiered at the Berlin International Film Festival in 1996, and it won the Teddy Prize. It won many other awards at film festivals after that. However, this was a time of a lot of strife around LGBTQ plus issues in the United States, and a Republican congressman called it possibly pornographic, which, yes, when it comes to controversy, this film's $300,000 budget was financed in part by a grant distributed by the National Endowment of the Arts, alongside donations and fundraisers. However, the NEA funding came under intense scrutiny after the film came out, because it does have a lesbian sex scene, and it was the funding structure was restructured, and people in Congress, Republicans in Congress, were basically saying, yeah, this is the government paying for porn. We cannot have this. And I have to say, when I read this, because I knew about this before I watched it, I was like, really? And then I watched it. I have to say it was steamier than I thought it would be.
Yeah, it was pretty. For the 90s, I was shocked that it allowed for all of that to be seen. And I didn't notice. Did it have a rating? I don't think I knew.
So the one I watched is the re-release that happened kind of recently. And it was like PG-13.
Okay. Oh, really?
I think at the time, I don't know what it was at the time.
All right. Well, but I think it was it pre or when it was just PG and R? Like those are the only.
No, that was the 80s that happened.
Okay. Close enough. I was like, very surprised it was PG-13 though, still.
I don't know if it was. What I was watching it on was using a different, it's almost like a TV system of rating instead of a movie system of rating.
Yeah, I got you.
So I'm not sure, but it was like 13. I think it said 13. And I was
only
like,
13.
Okay. Huh. Well, but it was, I have to admit, it was steamier than I thought it would be, but it wasn't anything like crazy.
No. You never see like any vagina. It was all like boobs, which is typically okay, but still, like, again, because usually when it's women,
right,
and like that's an automatic R, if not X.
Yeah.
In R.
Yeah. But that was one of the ways it was historic, Samantha.
Yes, it's true.
Is having this sex scene in it. And it was, yeah, they really got down to it. Oh. Okay, so here are some of the themes. I think it's a very great example of intersecting identity because you have Cheryl, who is a Black lesbian, and kind of dealing with all of what that means to her and what it means to people in her life and how that impacts her. So you do get a couple of instances throughout the movie. I feel like there's a lot of instances of people being like too afraid to say, oh, she was gay. Like she hung out at this place and we know what that probably meant. But it doesn't feel like it's coming from a necessarily hateful place. But we do get like Martha's sister saying, oh, my sister wasn't that kind of woman. Do not spread these rumors, even though it's been like confirmed or printed and all of these other things, being that kind of woman being gay. So you have that. And then you have the question of race, which comes up in a lot of different ways in this. One of the interesting ways I thought was because Cheryl kind of does a history of Black cinema. It's interesting to hear and to see how she's like, these movies that featured mostly Black people were screened at these theaters, or they were screened before these movies that had largely white people or something, but how that kind of all faded away because people wanted that like Hollywood movie. But there used to be these theaters that were completely dedicated to that, or these clubs or things like that were just completely dedicated to that, and they went away. She goes to a bunch of them and they're all closed up, like boarded up. So that's sort of gentrification and just loss of culture, our spaces to have that culture in public. And then there's also a lot of instances where she runs into white people gatekeeping her, kind of like assuming she's illiterate. She goes to the library and the librarian's like, did you do the most basic thing? And they're like, yes, we did. Yeah, kind of like keeping her from information when you're talking about at the clit, which is sort of it's framed as like a rules-based thing, but it felt very like gatekeepy. She's accosted by the police at one point, who were like, this can't be your camera. That's impossible. And she does have a lot of, like, the movie starts where her and her friend Tamara are filming at a wedding, and she's setting up a shot, and this white photographer steps directly in front of her, and she's like, what do you think I'm doing here? Like, just being undermined and ignored. And this is her, that's what she wants to do. She wants to film, she wants to make these things. Another line that really stuck out to me was at the library when he said, check the Black section in the library, which as we know, a lot of stuff has come out about this recently, about the Dewey Decimal System and how it's set up. But he's just like, yeah, go over to that one section. And then you've got Diana, who is a well-off white lesbian, the white girl lesbian. They meet at the rental store, kind of hit it off, but She doesn't really defend Cheryl when that interviewee that she, Martha's sister, she set up is kind of abusive towards Cheryl. She just says some things that are off where you're like, I don't know about you. And this causes a rift between Tamara and Cheryl. Tamara says, all I see is that once again, you're going out with a white girl who want to be black. And they do get into a lot of like disagreements about this. Tamara also doesn't get why Cheryl would want to learn more about an actor who played these racist caricatures. But to Cheryl, this is one of the only ways she was seeing herself represented. But she also just wanted to know who this person was. She saw this movie and was like, who is this? I want to know. But it does also put a rift in their relationship. Tamara also has a bad habit of setting Cheryl up with not so great blind dates, shall we say. So that's it. I knew we were talking about this before, but Samantha has a real secondhand embarrassment thing. And I was watching that scene, the karaoke at the beginning, and I was like, oh, Samantha's not going to like this.
No, I was not happy. I'm not going to lie. The 90s acting, and I know this was, I think, her first film, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, of course, she didn't have the budget and all these things, and she was bringing people in. But yeah, it did. I was like, oh, this entire thing is making me cringe so hard in every way. But I love that it is represented here for sure. I wonder, I don't know. I'm sure we could probably find a interview with her talking about what would change today if they could remake that movie, because everything in it still kind of stands. You know, the fact that, you know, the erasure and trying to hunt things and people of color, especially Black women in this industry, is hard to find today. So it would be probably the same look with better acting. Not necessarily from her, but like in general, like the one-offs that were supposed to be like funny lines. It took me a second because I was like, what are they trying? That's supposed to be funny. You know, I'm thinking about the dude who played the boss at the videotape store, like oftentimes, and then the white girl who played the coworker. Mm-hmm. That scene where she walks in to hit on the Black woman, which was like at clit. It looked like I thought they were actually trying to have her act. Like that, I thought that this was supposed to be a setup for her documentary, and then I realized, oh no, this is supposed to. Okay, never mind. Like. Moments like that when I was like, what is this? But all that to say is I think it's such an amazing representation. There was a lot of awkward moments. The singing was so awkward that I can't get past the awkward part to make it to be funny, because the fact that her friends were so ready, the friends of the person that was being set up were so ready to like root for her. And I was like, no, but why? Yes, this film was really interesting. Throwing back to the 90s for real.
Oh, yeah. Right. Well, they did cut away before she finished the song. So
not before the high note, though.
Not before the high note, but before she finished the song. But yeah, that was pretty early on, too.
Yeah, it was quickly on.
Yes. But I do think that was one thing that was really interesting, is seeing the complexity of relationships with all of these identities in mind and having these disagreements and trying to work through them, because no community is a monolith. We've talked about that all the time. So I thought that was really handled well, of just the kind of when you rub against someone who you are friends with or who you're interested in, or all of those things. But this does bring us to another big theme, which is something you mentioned: history and representation. And this is something we've talked about at length on this show, is the importance of documenting history, the importance of who's documenting it, we've just done so many books or movies that are about this kind of very thing. And that's in part because of things like erasure, purposeful erasure. This movie was dedicated to Black actresses who played this Mammy role, specifically Butterfly McQueen, Hattie McDaniel, and Louise Beavers, and others who were often forgotten or not credited. Faye Richards is fictional, and at the end it says, like, sometimes your story isn't there, so you make one up, but is a stand-in for them. They couldn't afford the archival footage, but also it kind of gives the whole thing more breathing room. Faye used to sing in Philadelphia lesbian ballrooms as well, and that's sort of how Cheryl found her, is from people who remembered her from there. The director was inspired to make the movie after taking an African-American film class and learning that most Black women from the 30s and 40s were uncredited. I also thought it was interesting that they have this whole scene where they go to see, I think it's a friend or like an uncle of Tamara's, and he's like kind of notoriously not great with women.
Right.
And he's like, oh, I don't know who you're talking about. I don't know what that is. This also gave me a chance to learn about Camille Anna Paglia, who I didn't know, but is a feminist who is extremely controversial. And I was looking up her thoughts, and I was like, oh dear. But so Cheryl interviews her, and who it still exists as a real feminist. And she's like, I don't think we're reading too much into this mammy stereotype or doing all of the, like, we're thinking too much about this or whatever. She basically thinks like feminism became too Stalin-esque. But she's got some, nobody's perfect, but she's got some problematic views.
Wait, she's not a TERF, is she? Is she?
No, she identifies, at least the brief search that I did, as transgender, but she also doesn't think, she made it sound like it's not that big of a deal to her.
Yeah. Well, I feel like that may be part of the whole entirety of the film, is the going back and forth. And I've seen this with, like, you know, conversations in race and all of that. We wish everything was so normalized that it wouldn't have to be a thing. It doesn't, no one wants to characterize a thing as a big significant deal or have to, like, call yourself trans. You could just be a woman, you know, or you don't have to call yourself, you know, the Asian actor. You can just be an actor, like all these different conversations. And I think this is a part of that play in, because it feels like Cheryl goes back and forth, and, like, she's attracted to who she's attracted to. Why can't she be? And on one side, she has people like, well, you're attracted to a white woman who fetishizes women, or fetishizes Black women specifically. And she's like, but I really like her and we get along. And then you come to the flip side that they're not wrong. Like, the girlfriends start talking about having Black boyfriends and Black boyfriends and Black boyfriends and Black girlfriends. And you see her with a Black woman, obviously in something, in another part. So, like, it does seem that they're right, but this back and forth of, like, why can't it be just that?
Yeah.
And I think that's that conversation that this person, which I didn't realize she was a significant character either. I didn't realize who she was at all. I was like, oh, I thought she was just a fiction person brought into this as well. Oh. I wonder if that's her true commentary.
The first time I was reading about it, they made it sound like she was playing into it.
Okay.
But then the second time, then I looked her up.
Yeah.
And I was like, this sounds like something she would have said.
Because, like, obviously Faye was a character, and they're kind of talking about that reference of, like, have you ever heard of this woman? She's like, no, blah, blah, blah. But this over-the-top stereotype is everything turns into that conversation that most white liberals or white feminists especially would say would be like, why does it have to be about race? And you're like, that is that question. But it does, because you are racist. Like, these are those comments. So, like, these things are inherently bad, and systemically there is racism, so we have to talk about race. But yes, we get it. We would love to be like, why does it have to be but a woman? Like, yes, we do, but we know because that is held up against us, we have to talk about the fact that We Are Women, all these different things. And it feels very like, it feels like a push against that white feminist, especially white lesbian feminist, in that arc, that clit organization the entire time. And I know this was supposed to be a funny moment because the girl's like constantly going, we're run by volunteers. It's a nonprofit by volunteers. We'll get to you in 6 months. Like this type of conversation. And as she's trying to do research, she's like, don't take pictures. Like so like on top of her for every little thing as well. But at the same time, bragging about the fact that I don't make any money off of this. I'm cool. Like that kind of scenario is very interesting in that conversation. And also in having that forethought about the fact that many Black women weren't known, or their name wasn't out there when it came to white art. But in actuality, this Faye was a huge star in the Black film world. She was starred in many of films, and they were trying to push her to be the big star of most films. They had that one Faye film where I guess you have that either younger daughter or sibling who wants to be white, and that go back and forth in Faye's character being like, why do you have to be? Why can't you be who you are? All these things. Like, there's so much like in this that was so cram packed that I feel like we could talk forever about and dissect one portion of that, because it had that level of like, once again, we had this very famous, supposedly not famous actress, but actually she is. And the only reason they found her is because she went through Black archives, which were scattered away. And then the whole feminist clit organization talking about, well, we did get some money, but it's only for this. And then they only have smallpox. And it's taking them extra long to get to this point. Or even like they're not paying attention to it, even though they even may have gotten the funding. So there's again this whole broad stroke of things happening, that back and forth of like, yes, it exists, but I couldn't find it. And when I found it, I found out that she actually was well known. They just didn't think that she was well known because of erasure, this and this. And then also like, from what I can gather, you can tell me what you think, Cheryl was not necessarily impressed, but intrigued by the idea that Martha and Faye were together, and felt like maybe it was love because all the pictures looked really like telling and loving and kind. But then we have June coming in and be like, no, that was something that she was very ashamed of. And like, whose shame is this? Is this another conversation? Was this a parallel, as it's supposed to be, to Cheryl's current life with her friends? Or is this, there's so many like back and forth in that.
Yes. And that was a theme that I had to bring up, is that you do kind of get like a blurring of Faye's story and Cheryl's story. Because you see similar things. Cheryl starts the film being very, like, she tries to say she's a filmmaker and then stops, and it's like, well, I'm not really a filmmaker, but I work at a rental store and I'm around movies. Like, she just kind of is not secure in what she does. But by the end, that's not the case anymore. And you also have her dating Diana, this white woman, and having these questions about it, these arguments with her friends about it. And so it is interesting to see the commonalities that they have. And I think she feels a real connection to Faye's story. And she's really motivated to tell it. And when she does finally contact June, who it was like, no, I've been with Faye for 20 years until she died. This was a lie. She was ashamed of it. Or she kind of, to me, it kind of sounded like she had to do it.
Right.
To like,
that exploitation seemed to be implied.
Yeah, exactly. So she had to sort of date her to get into movies. And she tells Cheryl in a note, please tell this history. Please tell the truth. This is what needs to be out there. And she, as far as we know, never gets to meet June, just has this letter. But it is kind of that idea that we've been talking about a lot, I feel like, lately, of learning the full truth of someone. Because all she had was this name, the Watermelon Woman. She was interviewing people on the street. No one knew who it was. She was like going to experts, and a lot of them were like, I don't know who that is. And then through her research, she found this whole person whose story had been told in this one way that was incorrect. And so I think that that's a really powerful thing. But also alongside that, you have Cheryl's own story of coming into yourself and figuring yourself out, because she has this whole conversation where she's like, you know what? I'm still figuring things out. But she does settle into the idea of, I am a storyteller, filmmaker, and I have so much more to do. And here's a quote. Most importantly, what I understand is that I'm going to be the one who says, I'm a Black lesbian filmmaker who's just beginning, but I'm going to say a lot more and have a lot more work to do. So she started the movie where they were kind of ribbing her about, you always say you're going to work on this project and you never do. And then she did, and she made it. And now she is going to do other things.
Right. They're also like the friendship, because she talks about loss of friendships. At the end of it, she's like, I lost this, I lost this, I lost this, but I got this. Maybe we'll fix this. There's this conversation, and I don't know, I think, and I do know in many respect to like her dabbling into film, her wanting to do dating Diane, all these things, which by the way, Tamara was right there being like, yeah, you should go after her. Why don't you go talk to her? Like at the very beginning. So it was really odd that she flipped real quick. Maybe that was the girlfriend's influence, because the girlfriend was the one that really had the big problem with her and then kind of built up. Mm-hmm. But it seemed like there was, including the fact that June, when you see Cheryl talking to June on the phone, and she was like, it almost is questioning, how Black are you? What type of Black person are you? Can you prove, how do you make your colors? Asking that, as well as like that conversation in which not only are they saying maybe Diana just has a fetish with trying to be white. You're trying to do these things that is too much. You're too overachieving. Like the friend was not nice. I will say Tamara was not nice. She was not very supportive in a lot of that. Of course, both of them had a back and forth, but like it felt kind of like maybe that was a part of the journey as well. Again, that she came out with like, I am Black and I am a Black queer filmmaker. I'm a lesbian filmmaker. So there doesn't need to be this question. I don't understand why I feel like I have to be questioned. But again, the back and forth of being like, yeah, but Diana did turn out to be exactly what they thought she was in one essence, especially when you see the interaction between the sister of Martha and the three of them, because at the end you have a Black woman who obviously is the housekeeper there. But the way that setup came in, I was like, oh, that was very purposeful.
Yep.
In that, because a part of the question was with Martha, not only was she offended by the idea that she was queer in any way, or that she was a lesbian, but she was really offended at the idea that she would be with a Black woman. That's kind of the implication in that conversation. And so like there's a whole level of questioning in her search in this as well, which I'm sure, again, as you were saying, is that question that Faye had in trying to appease white people to make it to finally being herself from the film world. So there's that whole back and forth in that as well. A lot of thoughts. It's definitely a coming of age or coming into your own.
Yes, it is. And I love that it's still being screened at colleges. I love that Cheryl Dunye is still doing these interviews. But yeah, I mean, I would love listeners who've never seen it, who are younger. Let us know. The 90s. The 90s.
Oh, the 90s.
It was pretty great. Oh my gosh.
Oh, yeah. It took me a good 20 minutes to get comfortable in it. I was like, oh my God, this is all awkward.
Oh, and the technology. I didn't even talk about that, but it's good. It's all there for you if you would like it.
If you need a time machine to know what historically Anney says happened in the 90s, go check it out.
That is a good... One thing I did want to bring up that kind of annoyed me, it is historic, because this was the first time an out Black lesbian woman in the US directed a movie. But I did get kind of annoyed about how many reviews I found of it were like, it's a niche within a niche within a niche. And I'm like, it really shouldn't be. I feel like there's one niche maybe. Right. But the rest of it should be.
It's an independent film.
Right.
And it's a niche for the times, but it shouldn't be today.
No, like I think what they meant was, you know, we don't get a lot of movies like this. That is true. I don't think that means it's niche.
Right.
I think that's a different problem. But yeah. I'm glad we finally watched it. It's been on our list for years.
It has. We brought it up and we're like, we'll wait.
Well, wait, but now
mainly because we couldn't find it. I still had to rent it.
I did too. But I recommend it. I think it obviously has a lot of salient conversations that are still relevant today. But all right, listeners, if you have any thoughts about this movie or what should be our next movie, please let us know. You can email us at hello@stuffInevertoldyou.com. You can find us on Blue Sky Monster Podcast or on Instagram and TikTok at Stuff I Never Told You. We're also on YouTube, and we have a book you can get wherever you get your books. Thanks as always to our super producer Christina, our executive producer Maya, and our contributor Joey.
Thank you.
And thanks to you for listening. Stuff I Never Told You is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, you can check out the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.